Tune in to Lead Story, weekdays at 6 p.m. Hosted by Jody Ann Quarry. Brought to you by
Horizon, a new loan product from Access Financial Services.
Hey, what's up, one?
Hi, I am Kendi Pang.
Watagwan.
Watagwan.
Datagwan pa.
Watagwan.
Watagwan, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 8 a.m., 1:30 p.m., and 10 p.m. on CVM TV.
Datagwan pa. Watagwan.
Good evening. Tonight, capital and consequences. We begin with the National Housing Trust at 50 years old and a debate over whether temporary fiscal measure has become a structural dependency. If we didn't keep taking from the trust, could we build more houses for more people? Then, a rare and high-stakes sit-down. Michael Leachin speaks with CVM's managing editor, Giovanni Dennis, for the first time since the delayed payment issue at NCB and the newly announced asset taxes in Jamaica. This is his first extended, structured response on these matters, and it could have consequences not just for Jamaica, but for the region. I'm Jody Ann Quarry, and this is Lead Story. This year marks the 50th anniversary of the National Housing Trust. It was founded on a simple social contract. Working people contribute, and the state uses that pool of capital to turn income into shelter. Since 2013, however, the NHT has transferred 114 billion dollars annually. Nope, $11.4 billion annually to the Consolidated Fund. If extended to 2031, that cumulative figure every single year since 2013 will exceed Jamaican $200 billion. The opposition People's National Party has objected to the continued drawdowns, while the governing Jamaica Labour Party has said that the opposition's position is merely vulgar politicking. They did the same thing in the past as well. Well, to explore this issue, we're joined by opposition spokesperson on housing and sustainable living, Senator Professor Floyd Morris. Thanks so much for joining us, Senator Morris.
A pleasure, Jodian. And good afternoon to your listeners as well.
Thanks so much for staying with us. Senator Morris, the National Housing Trust belongs to its contributors. But it's Parliament that makes decisions about how the money can be spent. They retain legislative supremacy. Is the objection that you and the People's National Party have about the removal of money from the NHT once again a legal objection, a moral objection, or a fiscal objection?
Well, I could say all of the above, because I think Jodian, when you look at the original mandate of the NHT, it was designed to build affordable houses for the Jamaican people. And when you look at the data, it is pointing to, between 90,000 and 100,000 individuals who are struggling to find a home in our country. And that problem would be further exacerbated by the hurricane in Western Jamaica. And for the government to continue its annual raid on the NHT to fund the budget, I think it's immoral, I think it's unethical. The matter was challenged in the courts by surrogates of the current government when they were in opposition, and the courts deemed it a fairly legal act because it came through the channels of Parliament. But the fact of the matter is that we believe that the NHT funds must be used to do what it is supposed to do. When we took out the funds in between 2013 and 2016, it was because there was a crisis that the country was experiencing at the time. The government of the day up to 2011 had abandoned the IMF program. We were on the precipice, so to speak, in terms of our financial arrangement internationally. And none of the international donor agencies would negotiate with us until we came to a clear package that would rescue the country. That's how the NHT came into play at that time.
But since 2013, we have had continued removals of money from the National Housing Trust unabated. You mentioned that 2013 action. When Dr. Andrew Holness was opposition leader in 2013, he argued that taking NHT funds violated the property rights of contributors. Today, it seems that your party is making that same argument, that it's important that we be able to go back to that mandate and build houses. If the PNP then returns to power in the next election, will you do what it is that you've called for, which is legally ring-fence the NHT so that no future government, PNP that started that in 2013, the JLP that has continued since then, can ever touch this money again?
Yeah, we're not arguing the same thing as Prime Minister Holness did in 2013 about the violation of property rights, because I think the courts did settle that matter. But you would recall as well that the Prime Minister then said that he was not going to go that route and that he would ring fence the funds of the NHT. And he has made an about turn on the matter, and he has not just extended beyond the 2017 period that we had scheduled, but he has gone way beyond for 10 years and is now going into 15 years, because that is what they are going to be doing. But the fact of the matter is that we stated in the last election that we would have stopped the extraction. All right, we had stated it clearly in our manifesto and also on the platform, and the leader of the opposition has repeated that in the parliament, that we would have stopped it because we believe that the focus should be to use that money to build affordable houses for those individuals, that 48% of the NHT that is earning $30,000 a week and struggling to get a house from the trust that they have been contributing.
Senator Morris, you have said, though, that it was an emergency that led to the first drawdown from the National Housing Trust. Since then, we've had COVID-19, an emergency, and most recently, Hurricane Melissa last year, another emergency. And the government has made it very clear that this pull down that they're doing from the NHT is necessary in order to make sure that we're in a good fiscal position to therefore get the loans that we need in order to rebuild. Is this not then an emergency situation that you might forgive them for going back to the NHT once more?
Well, I mean, I had heard long before the Hurricane Melissa that the government was going to go back to the NHT. They had intended to extend the extraction. So, you know, they they're just using the Hurricane Melissa situation as an excuse, because if you would recall, the government for the past 10 years have been saying that no new taxes, right? And what they have been doing is to use the extraction of the NHT to fund the budget and to say that they have no new taxes. And this is a sort of indirect taxation on the beneficiaries or the contributors of the NHT.
An important point you raised there, Senator Morris, given then that for 10 years they were able to argue no new taxes. But is the PNP's position right now, after Hurricane Melissa, with $8.8 billion in damage caused by the hurricane, that it would be better to increase other taxes that we have, like the GCT or the gas tax on all Jamaicans, rather than go to the NHT surplus for national recovery?
Well, one of the things that we had proposed in our manifesto, and this is how the PNP would have been able to recoup and shoot with the matter. We had proposed during the election that we need to bring in some changes to land tenureship in Jamaica. And that would see us changing the time frame that it would take for an individual to claim government land that they have lived on for over a period of time.
Senator Morris, to be very clear though, this is a big long-term issue about land tenure, but we have a government budget that must be passed. In the very short term, what would the PNP then have said? Not to take from the NHT, but where would that money for the budget come from?
It's not a long-term thing, because what it would require is to change the law from 60 years to 25 years. And we would have done that within the first year of our term. And what it would have done is to free up over $1 trillion worth of assets in the economy. And then from that would flow taxes that would help to stimulate economic activity and increase the contribution for the government's budget.
Hurricane Melissa, though, happened 2 years into the latest term of rather 2 months into the latest term of the government. Even with 1 year of planning that the PNP now would have placed in their manifesto, it still would have left a gap for this current budget. Is there anything that the PNP would have done differently then in order to get money to be able to not only shore up hurricane recovery, but also make us an attractive prospect for loans?
Well, you're gonna hear all of that from the spokesperson on finance. He has signaled that today that he's coming with a number of measures, and I am certain that that will be backed up by the leader of the opposition in the debate. And it's not my duty to preempt them, but I am indicating to you what would have happened, because the funds, when you fund a budget, the funds don't come in immediately as it is read by the Minister of Finance. It comes in during the financial year. And we are saying that if we were government, during the period, we would have made those changes that would have stimulated economic activity, that would grow the budget, the tax net for the government. And what we have proposed would have certainly assisted in that regard and would have caused us to stop the extraction from the NHT and put it towards building more affordable houses, which in itself is an economic activity that would stimulate and generate growth. What we need is economic growth in Jamaica that will help to drive the tax base of the country and make sure that the government can fund the budget on a credible basis.
I think that is so important that you said that, Senator Morris. And it's clear that we're going to have more conversations about the need for affordable housing and sustainable living here in Jamaica. Senator Professor Floyd Morris, opposition spokesperson on housing and sustainable living, thank you so much for joining us inside Lead Story. So that was clearly a conversation that has made its way all across Jamaica, reflected in what we just heard Senator Morris indicate to us. But he says we need economic growth. Well, when we return, a conversation many have been waiting for with a man that has made it his mission to see that there is some economic growth here in Jamaica. But he also hasn't spoken for a while. We'll be speaking with Michael Lee Chin next inside Lead Story.
The internationally acclaimed On Stage with Winford Williams.
At a new time, Saturdays at 8 p.m. on CVM TV.
So much more than entertainment.
Jamaica's unemployment rate has fallen to 3.3%, down from 13.2% in 2016. Our government's continued focus on job creation is delivering real results. We are building Jamaica. The Time by the Office of the Prime Minister is...
Let's delve deep into the issues. We'll take you beneath the surface.
Greetings and salutations. My name is Orville Higgins and it's another edition of Fan Central.
Talking to the people at the heart of the top sporting stories. Hear from your favorite sportsmen and women and the administrators who work tirelessly to make it all happen. It's live sports talk.
I've written an entire article.
Yes.
Looking at all the major issues every Tuesday at 9 p.m. It's Fan Central.
This is the first time Michael Lee Chin has spoken in a formal sit-down interview since 3 significant developments. Lee Chin is currently navigating what could be called a perfect storm, a US $94.1 million debt repayment deadline that was missed in January, a 71% surge in NCB's profits that hasn't yet pacified nervous retail shareholders, and a new asset tax that he's publicly calling to be abolished. They have triggered questions about capital stability, corporate governance, and investor confidence. This evening, CVM's managing editor Giovanni Dennis sits down with Michael Lee Chin for a 2-part interview that will air across Thursday, today, and Friday. This conversation is the first extended response from one of the region's most influential business figures. Let's begin.
Mr. Lee Chin, you spoke about the asset tax recently at NCB's AGM, as you said that was last week, Friday. You told, the asset tax for our viewers is a tax that the government has imposed on businesses like NCB. You said that you told shareholders it has affected the dividend payments as well as earnings. Could you explain for us just how badly the asset tax has affected the group?
Since 2012, when it was announced, NCB has paid over 194 million US dollars in asset tax. 194 million US dollars. So what that means, and by the way, this payment is not tax deductible. That's the first thing. The second thing is it was
Explain what you mean by tax deductible.
In other words, we cannot write it off as an expense. So it's an after-tax payment. And basically, it was supposed to be on for 3 years. It was agreed that it would have been on for 3 years. It's still on, and there is no end in sight. Whereby, after 3 years, in 2015, the IMF said this tax is distortionary. Distortionary not only to shareholders, because it's a direct extraction of value from shareholders to the coffers of the government. Not only is it distortionary to shareholders, it's distortionary to the economy because the cost of funds goes up because of this. In other words, the cost will pass through to the consumers. So interest rates will go up, which affects everybody.
Yeah.
And the economy.
You spoke about the 194 million that NCB alone has paid since 2013 when this came into effect up until now. But my viewers will be watching on and saying, well, you're making millions, billions of dollars in the case of NCB. Why not pay the tax?
Well, we pay enough taxes. NCB is the largest taxpayer in Jamaica. It's not a matter that we don't want to pay the tax or we don't want to pay tax. We pay taxes that are legislated and that should be paid. But in this case, the tax was brought on for 3 years to help after JDX and NDX. And remember, it's not only the asset tax that financial institutions paid or are paying to contribute to the revitalization of Jamaica. Because remember, for JDX and NDX, financial institutions took a cut in the bond interest that the interest on the bond portfolio that we had in the case of NCB and all financial institutions, we took we took a cut of over 12% from a 22% bond or 24% bond to 12% voluntarily to help the Jamaican economy to recover. Right? Secondly, the asset tax came in, but also there was a tax on dividend of 15%. Thirdly, financial institutions pay an incremental amount of taxes of corporately 33% versus everybody else 25%. So it's not that we don't want to pay taxes, but the financial services industry is a fat target to be taxed. And there's a problem because whenever we raise taxes in Jamaica, we make Jamaica less competitive globally because taxation is a globally competitive variable.
And you've said that you'll be continuing to call for reform. For clarity, are you calling for an abolition of the asset tax?
Well, an abolition is the first step. Really, the right thing to do was to go back to 2015 and rebate all the taxes that were paid. That's the right thing to do.
That's unlikely to happen, though.
Whether it's unlikely or not, we're talking about right and wrong. Unlikely or not, that's not the relevance here. Is what is relevant. We as a country, if we say we're going to do something, we have to do it because it takes away from our credibility.
With Hurricane Melissa now happening, though, will this call for the abolition of the asset tax, as you're speaking of, is it a lost cause now, given the economic context that we find ourselves in?
Well, with Hurricane Melissa, all of us still have to be responsible for the commitments that we had prior to Melissa. You still have to pay your mortgage, don't you? So we can't blame Melissa. We have to accept the responsibilities that we have and make sure we deal with them also. When we say we're going to do something, we do it. Because at the end of the day, we want to make Jamaica, number one, a merit-based society, and number two, a society, a country that foreign investors will want to invest in. We have to make sure whatever we do, we have an eye to, is this making us less investable or more investable? But we can't do anything to upset our investability. And right now, I'll say to you, as a professional investor, a professional money manager who manage money for internationally, Jamaica, in the outside of the tourist industry, is not investable. That's the reason why you don't have pension funds putting money into Jamaica, because it will be very difficult for pension funds abroad, international pension funds, to make an investment outside of the hotel industry, to make an investment to justify all the risks that are endemic in Jamaica. So we have to be conscious of that, because if we want to grow, we have to make sure we are not only conscious, but we act in such a way to make Jamaica investable.
Yeah, but you mentioned the tourism industry, but at what price, though, should the country try to make itself more investable? Because a lot of people will be looking on and saying tourism in Jamaica, how it's done, is exploitative, and the Jamaicans who are working in the field don't benefit enough.
That is a point, Gio, that I agree 100% with. Because what we really want to do is transition our tourist industry to a tourist industry similar to that of France, whereby the tourists can go and participate in the economy, go to the restaurants, go to a show, go to just walk around the country and participate and contribute to the economy. That's not the case now. Because that's when although we have the volume of tourists, we're not getting the benefits from, the country isn't getting the benefit as we should from the volume, right? Because of the type of tourist industry we have. So that's an area in which we need to, that's an area of growth for the country. Figuring out how we can diversify our tourism from just the all-inclusives that predominate today, and get it to be more of an industry whereby we can capitalize on the uniqueness of our culture, our arts, our health tourism, sports tourism, and eco-tourism. Then we'll have a true tourist industry that the country will benefit from. But right now, it's too concentrated in one area.
Yeah. And speaking of that, in terms of getting the economy where tourism is concerned, booming again and expanded and growing, as I mentioned earlier, the Independent Fiscal Commission has said that Hurricane Melissa caused an estimated $8.8 billion in damage. This is about 41% of GDP. Given the economic fallout caused by Melissa, what do you think needs to be done now to kind of get the economy growing again?
Well, the good news, the good news is we have lined up, the government has lined up somewhere between $6.7 and $10 billion, right? That's an infusion coming into Jamaica that's going to create a boom in Jamaica, because we have never seen, prior to Melissa, 6.7 to 10 billion of FDI coming in a very short time period. So we have to make...
And by FDI, you mean foreign direct investment,
which is what is now happening. Our foreign direct investment was trending down. Now we have this big wallop of cash coming in. We have to make sure that we architect the use of it properly. We make sure it's... we build resilience, we build communities that are for the future, right?
When you say architect the use of it properly, what do you mean by that in simple terms?
I mean, we think carefully as to Black River as an example. How are we going to rebuild Black River? We just don't want for it to be the same Black River. We have to think of...
The Prime Minister has said he wants it to be a modern city, and it was being eyed as a modern city even before Hurricane Melissa.
We know have to say, so what does that mean? What does a modern city mean? Because a modern city has to be one that has economic sustainability, right? So how are we going to make sure that it's when it's built, it can sustain itself economically, and it contributes to the economy of Jamaica?
The government for the past decade or so has, pat itself on the back each time it's presenting the budget. No new taxes. Do you think the imposition of new taxes this year, though, was inevitable?
Well, it is really a kudos to the government that we have had no taxes for the last 10 years. Melissa is an extraordinary event. So it is not unnatural. It's a logical thing that they have to balance the budget. We don't want to get back into pre-2012, right? But at the same time, we have to make sure that we honor our commitments. 3 years, that was to have been, the asset tax should have been ceased in 2015.
Not letting that one go.
I'm not letting it go.
Do you have any issue apart from the asset tax with the raft of new revenue measures, the raft of new taxes announced by the government?
Well, no, I don't have any issues, because those are, we all can choose. It's discretionary from the consumer standpoint, right? We can choose to pay it by not consuming in those areas.
Yeah. Do you have any concerns about the wider impact on businesses?
All of us have to gird our belt. We have just gone through an extraordinary event. So we all have to gird our belt. So we have to be thinking ahead. We have to be thinking about how are we really going to grow this economy? That has been a constant many decade long issue.
Speaking about growth in the economy, I want you to pause on that point. We're going to take a quick break right here with this special interview that we're doing here on CVM TV with Michael Leachin. When we come back, we'll be speaking a little bit more about economic growth and what that means, what it looks like, and some of what has been said in the past, not so much decades ago.
We'll continue with that interview here inside Lead Story.
Jamaica, make we do the right thing. Make we live good today for a better tomorrow. Talk it out. Don't fight it out. The time by the Ministry of National Security is
6:30. Everybody want to save a country right now. One thing about Jamaicans, we might have differences, but we know when something is good for all of us. And when we work together against crime and violence, we are stronger than ever. And that's how we know the Citizen Security Plan can work. That one and CSP. The Citizen Security Plan is an initiative of the Ministry of National Security in partnership with the European Union. It's an all-of-government effort to create safer streets and build stronger communities. Go to mns.gov.jm to learn how you can play your part.
Hi, I'm Landy. Welcome to NLA Connect, the National Land Agency's customer engagement platform. NLA Connect is a simple, user-friendly platform designed to help you share your feedback, get support, and updates about land-related matters. Available 24/7, NLA Connect allows you to share suggestions, comments, and commendations, submit queries and report issues, attach files with your requests, track requests and get real-time status updates, connect with NLA client engagement officers, and provide feedback on the service received by the platform. We're making it easier for you to connect with us. You can access NLA Connect via our website, using the kiosk at any of our offices, or scanning the QR code displayed at our locations. Need any help along the way? Check out our FAQs section. It has all the answers you need in one location. NLA Connect, your voice, our priority.
Part 2 of this interview continues the discussion. What is the responsibility of corporate leadership in moments of fiscal change? And how should investors interpret recent events? Again, this is Michael Leachin in his first extended sit-down since the NCB payment delay and the announcement of the new asset taxes.
And in 2017, there was a lot of hope when the Economic Growth Council was announced, and you, as chair, I remember you were speaking about 5% growth in GDP in 4 years, 5 in 4, it was dubbed, but that all seemed to fade away. It never happened, and the council just seemed to disappear. What went wrong?
Well, personally, I spent a lot of time on that project. I'd come from Canada every other week for 4 years and dedicate 100% of my time to the EGC. We met with over 500 meetings in 4 years, from the IMF, IDB, World Bank, ministries, departments, agencies, customs, police, all sorts of groups, the bureaucracy, etc. And like many things in Jamaica, we don't follow through. We don't follow through. And everything in life, nothing in life goes up like this. Most things in life goes like this. You have to invest time and patience and effort and keep it going, and then eventually you start getting the benefit. We have to make, so in this case, COVID came after in 2020. Everything got interrupted, but there was no enthusiasm to have the EGC continue post-COVID. And that was my fault. That was my decision because, as I said, I had 500 meetings in 4 years. At the same time, you see, there are three things that we have to make as an owner. You own your house. There are three things you have to do to make sure you have a successful ownership of your home or a pen or anything. Number one, you have to take responsibility for it. You have to be accountable, and you either suffer consequences if things go bad or you rewards if things go well. In this case, with respect to the EGC, we did not continue on long enough to reap the benefits. But when I took the job on, I said one of the conditions was that I wanted to make sure that I had the opportunity to report to the nation every quarter, which we did. So it was uneasy for some people who were being called out. But this is what we have to do. In other words, if we want to take responsibility for the growth of our country, we have to take responsibility. We have to be accountable. So some people have to be accountable for the job that they're supposed to do, and they have to suffer consequences if they don't do the job. So we were calling people out quarterly because that's what you have to do. But that's calling people out when they're not doing a job is uneasy. So for whatever reason, the EGC was allowed to evaporate when we were on a good thing. In fact, Jamaica had an opportunity.
You said it was a good thing. Do you think it's something that we should probably go back to?
Of course, because every organization, every business has to take responsibility, be accountable, and suffer consequences. A country is no different, and we were unique in the world. In fact, other countries were saying we need an EGC too, because we have it was a meld between the public sector and the private sector taking responsibility for growth. And growth has eluded us for the last 40 years. We have not had meaningful growth for 40 years.
Speaking about taking responsibility, coming back as an issue we can't ignore, your own personal investment companies have had a lot of press with some of your debt issues. For clarity, these are private companies separate from NCB. The late payment of US $94 million bond installment, for example, that was due in December 31 but was paid in January 23 has raised a lot of questions. One of the main reasons so many people have been interested is because of questions about the future of NCB Financial Group. A statement from your office in December had said that options included full repayment or settling the current sum or potentially divesting your shares in the group. This is something that you had said. I remember that statement. How seriously were you considering divesting your shares?
Look, when you, again, taking responsibility, when you own debt, it's ownership of anything. When you own anything, as I said, there are three things you have to do. You have to be responsible to the ownership of it. In this case, it's debt. I have to be responsible for the ownership of the debt. I have to be accountable and have to suffer consequences. Okay? So, people, bondholders, were trusting in me when they loan me the money. So I have to make sure that I respect that trust. So whatever I had to do to honor that trust, that's what I would do or will do.
Is that something you're still considering, as I mentioned, will do?
100%. I have to make sure I honor the trust that people put in me. So if it means that I have to sell the bank, I will, because it's my reputation.
Yeah. The next repayment, as I mentioned, that is due September 2026, and according to Andrea Kelly, the manager of the JCSD and the JCSD Trustee Services. How confident are you that that payment will be made on time?
100%. and the following payment in June of 2027, 100%. And paying off the note holders in December of 2027, 100%.
Yeah, NCB shares closed off yesterday at $42.04 compared to trading at about 200 and higher between 2019 and 2020. Shareholders haven't been happy. Why isn't the stock trading higher?
Well, Jamaica, again, our goal should be to make Jamaica investable. Part of being investable is to have a stock market that is liquid, right? On the Jamaica Stock Exchange, if you were to trade over a certain amount of shares, it affects the stocks, the shares traded in a volatile way because we don't have enough liquidity in the stock market in Jamaica. So the stock market in Jamaica is there when a market is illiquid, and when you have players in the market who have clandestine and surreptitious objectives, they can play with the market.
I want to speak a little bit more
also
on that clandestine and surreptitious. Well, I mean the same thing, objectives that you just spoke about there, but I want to follow up on it on the other side of this break. We take our final break here on this special interview with Michael Lee Chin here on CVM TV.
All right, that's an interview there with Giovanni Dennis, our managing director, with businessman, billionaire and mogul Michael Lee Chin, having his first structured sit-down interview with us here at CVM Television about what it is that he is concerned about. He went through a wide range of issues, indicating that the asset tax for him was a credibility killer, and making that appeal more than once that the government of Jamaica return the asset tax monies that had been paid since 2015. It's going to be a difficult ask because every Jamaican wants their taxes back and their tax money back. But this asset tax, as a tax that's leveraged on financial institutions, is one that we've had conversations about here inside Lead Story. And as you heard at the very top of that interview, he says that the NCB pays the lion's share of that, given that it's the largest of our banks here on the island. Certainly, though, we heard about the asset tax, the death of 5 in 4 and the Economic Growth Council that he also spoke about, and the missed payment, a willingness to sell thanks to that missed payment of $94.1 million in December, a payment that was made in January. Now, all that said, that's a big interview. The second part of it will be played tomorrow on Friday, February 20. That continues our special here, talking to Michael Lee Chin on what it is that he sees and how it is that he thinks we should be structuring the markets and what it is that we do here post-Hurricane Melissa. But all that we've just heard a while ago, well, that might be a lot to digest. So after the break, we've brought in someone to help us break it down and give us reactions to what it is that we have heard. We're going to take that break and come back to Julian Morrison next inside Lead Story.
Hi, I'm Landy. Welcome to NLA Connect, the National Land Agency's customer engagement platform. NLA Connect is a simple, user-friendly platform designed to help you share your feedback, get support, and updates about land-related matters. Available 24/7, NLA Connect allows you to share suggestions, comments, and commendations, submit queries and report issues, attach files with your requests, track requests and get real-time status updates, connect with NLA client engagement officers, and provide feedback on the service received via the platform. We're making it easier for you to connect with us. You can access NLA Connect via our website, using the kiosk at any of our offices, or scanning the QR code displayed at our locations. Need any help along the way? Check out our FAQs section. It has all the answers you need in one location. NLA Connect, your voice, our priority.
The internationally acclaimed On Stage with Winfred Williams.
At a new time, Saturdays at 8 p.m. on CVM TV.
So much more than entertainment.
Every dream conquered is another dream gained. I land and I fly again like a jet plane. Headed straight in your direction. 'Cause I'm wiser, one step closer. I'm winning 'cause I work so hard. And the music keeps on playing, and the people them I say we are my show tonight. Oh, what a feeling! Don't stop dreaming. Keep on believing in the power of the feeling. Whatever you want, take a chance. Song in your heart, step in your dance. You got a spark, don't put it down. Shine your lights on.
You just heard from Michael Lee Chin as he did his first sit-down interview, structured after what took place earlier this year in the new asset tax. Now, we're getting reactions. We have with us in studio economist and head of investments at Novamed, Julian Morrison. Hi, Julian. Welcome back to Lead Story.
Thanks for having me.
I say welcome back to him because we had this conversation about the asset tax a few days ago, talking about the government's perspective on this, given the incident that we had last year, Hurricane Melissa being a tail event, he said last we spoke. You've just heard part one of Michael Lee Chin's interview, his public response since the NCB delay and the new tax asset framework. What was your initial reaction to what he said?
Well, it's ironically aligned with much of our discussion within the context of course, the storm being a tail event.
And explain to us what that tail event means. What is a tail event signal?
It's once in a blue moon. That's pretty much what it means. It's a statistical turn of phrase, which means something that is out of the norm, and it happens once in a blue moon. So a lot of what was said is not a surprise.
The statistical anomaly part of this, though, is something that we're grappling with the reality of, given that we're now dealing with climate change and things like Hurricane Melissa. Big hurricanes like these are expected more frequently. Is there anything that Jamaica needs to do to shift to prepare for something like this versus treating it like something that is unlikely to happen? Because we are forecast to have more like this more frequently.
Yes, so we need to be very proactive around our coastline. So we need to ensure that the physical infrastructure is in place. So our drainage, ensuring that the country is clean so that the drains can actually function in line with their intended purpose, as well as mangroves. So we have to ensure that our mangroves are healthy and mature enough to absorb whenever storm surges come in, so that the built structures that are there have the additional cushion that they need. Because what most persons don't remember is that mangroves are actually like sponges, and they can help to absorb a lot of those large storm surges that come in and cause so much destruction. So those are some low-hanging fruit for Jamaica to address. I do think there's a lot more we can do around public education. Sometimes we don't take storms seriously. We hear about it, we have memes online saying we hear about all of these storms and none of them don't come, but we just cannot afford to take anything for granted, as we have learned recently. So that's my initial feedback around what we can do better.
I think it's important then, given that you have spoken to us about physical and environmental infrastructure, we then focus in on what Michael Lee Chin spoke about with financial and fiscal infrastructure here in Jamaica. He told us here at CVM that the new asset tax takes away from our credibility as a country and makes Jamaica unattractive to investors from an economic standpoint. Is this tax a fair way to fund the kind of devastation that we saw after Hurricane Melissa, US $8.8 billion in damage? Or is it, as he said, you're looking now at the meaty financial sector, you look at them and you say, hi, I feel they might have some extra money. And is this instead a short-sighted raid on the capital of the most important financial pillars in the country?
Well, I don't believe that it's a raid. It's, again, an emergency response approach, because what's happening right now is that we are responding to an emergency. The level of damage that took place is something that is not going to be remedied for right now, and we have to make less than ideal decisions in order to fund the budget. And as you said, the damage has been so extensive, and we addressed that in our prior discussion. But what I would say is NCB is in somewhat of a unique position in that it's not just the Jamaican asset tax that they are challenged by, but there are also other similar taxes in the other operating territories within which NCB operates, like Trinidad.
That's why we've made it very clear that this conversation that he's having with us here at CVM has regional consequences, with other investors in other countries looking to see what it is that he's saying here and the kind of impact that it might have in other places. But the asset tax, he is saying he isn't putting it in the context of Hurricane Melissa now recently taking place. He's going back as far as 2015, saying the initial imposition of the asset tax in 2013 had that short window. And in fact, he's going back to say, listen, the government should, as the right thing to do, refund, not only abolish the asset tax, but refund the monies that had been collected under the asset tax since 2015. From 2015 until now, we haven't had Hurricane Melissa. So Hurricane Melissa is responsible for this new asset tax. But this entire time, NCB has been paying these monies. How do you say to others who would argue that taking this out of the economy and sending it directly to the government is not the best way to grow this country, and instead we needed to have been able to use it to loan and build and grow? Well,
it's a delicate matter, because there are some idiosyncrasies that are tied to Jamaica. Jamaica is very unique. Jamaica has a population that is not growing much. The population is declining in terms of the birth rate. And what that means is that it hampers our growth rate. So what does that mean? A lower birth rate today means a smaller labor force tomorrow, which has negative implications for productivity.
But that the asset tax is something that the banks and financial institutions have to pay today. I don't suppose they can wait until somebody turns 18 to become a productive member of society. When it comes to the kinds of revenue that they're losing right now and the kinds of lending out that they could do, the access that borrowers could have to funds, it's an immediate problem that he's speaking to, one that his bank, by virtue of being the largest, has to deal with. Is there anything that would allow for the government to look at this and say, poor you NCB, or is he like every other Jamaican? Of course the government promised me that I wouldn't have to pay more taxes, but too bad, so sad. We need the money. Pay up.
Well, I'm going to hold my original position in that it's less than ideal, but necessary because of where we are from a national standpoint. But I mentioned the lower birth rate within the context of the economy, because Jamaica is a low growth economy. When you look at recovery growth, which is growth that happens right after a shock, you might see a growth rate of 4 or 6%. But our average, our long to medium term average, consistently sits anywhere between 1 and 2%. And for a developing country, that's low. And what that means is when you have a country that has a low growth rate, you don't really have as much flexibility around taxes.
All right, let's talk about that then, because he also spoke about the Economic Growth Council, something that he was a chair of, that he had been working on. 5% growth in 4 years had been the tagline for that council, working now to see if we could speed up that growth process. He said it's something we need to get back to, especially as it was commended outside of the country. Do you believe that there's still room for the Economic Growth Council, given the changed priorities of the government and now Hurricane Melissa?
Yes, I do think that we need, it may not necessarily be the Economic Growth Council in its former dispensation, but we need some kind of panel and forum where different stakeholders can brainstorm, collaborate, create some.
Not the Independent Fiscal Council, for example, that we currently have?
Well, the Independent Fiscal Council would play a different role. The Economic Growth Council would have more of a holistic role in terms of having a public-private partnership and having a message around where Jamaica is going medium term. Because messaging and having a consensus between the various parts of Jamaica, the persons who own assets, the persons who work hard every day and get fixed incomes, the persons who live hand to mouth, so to speak. Everyone has to be on the same accord as it relates to where we're going.
So that's a plan, that's a vehicle that gets us there with everybody in the vehicle. Just before we go, quick answer for you. What signal should regional investors take from the first half of this sit down with Michael Leachin?
Well, it's a step in the right direction as it relates to transparency. Transparency is a major part of risk management. Investors need to know the risk that they are taking, and having this kind of open discussion goes a very far way. That's number one. Number two, there has been a large campaign around where NCB is going as it relates to the future. So what that means is, with NCB saying that a greater focus is going to be on capital and not as much on profit, it does change the conversation around where NCB is going. NCB has been profitable for many years, but profits need context. You can only be profitable to a point where your capital base eventually catches up to you. So pretty much the capital base is like your bucket, and you pour from that bucket. You generate profits from that bucket. If the bucket is not healthy, then eventually the substance that's in that bucket is not going to be able to catch up.
Well, we'll certainly be listening to what Michael Leachin says in the second half of that interview, to be played tomorrow inside Lead Story. That's it, though, for today's edition of the show. On behalf of the entire production team, and we have here Julian Morrison on set with us, so at this point in time we're putting him in part of the production team too. Thank you for watching Lead Story. Have a fantastic evening, and I hope you stay safe. Up next, CVM News.